And welcome to this A-level PE video. This is another one on the use of technology. If you've not seen the other ones on technology, go and check them out. I'll post some links on here. Now today we're going to look at how elite performers and recreational performers can use GPS. And that's a really ever-developing technology that is out there at the moment. And you can get free apps such as Strava, which you can get on your phone, and they'll track you, and they can track you on your bike or your run, and they can tell you how fast you're going, when you change speed, altitude, all of those things. You can use them as social media, and you can follow friends and compete with friends and all those kind of things. And the other thing a lot of people have got is they've got tracker watches, Garmin, FitBit, etc. Apple watches, all now have got kind of trackers, and they can sync with those apps such as Strava, Map My Run. So we're going to look at today how elite performers use it. Now, we've mentioned Prozone in another video. We're going to look at some other things they use to track performance. But we're also going to look at how recreational performers do it too. Right then, let's go. So this is the use of technology in sport. We're particularly looking at GPS and motion tracking for AQA. So GPS, global positioning satellite trackers. So these are in all mobile phones. They can find where you are, they can help you plan journeys, etc. But they can be used in sport because they can track your distance covered, they can track how fast you were going, they can track the change in speed, so therefore your acceleration, and they can track the G-force of impact. Now that's really an elite sport type function, but all the others actually we can all access. Now they use satellite tracking to do this, so there is a degree of error in that because it's so far away and it can't be perfect. In addition, most also now monitor heart rate recovery. So some tracker watches have a heart rate monitor built in, or you can have a chest monitor which links to the GPS tracker as well, so you can get simultaneous data of heart rate and effort. They track recovery afterwards, and they can also track training zones. You can program in to make sure you're working in your training zone, or so the data show you if you're working in your training zone. Now, what you can do here is if you check out this advert on what's called Next Gen Stats, it's a bit cheesy. It's from the USA, it's from the NFL, but it shows you how they are using GPS trackers, which they use in the shoulder pads, to monitor players' movement, where they move on the pitch, how fast they move. And they also use that for sports analytics, which I mentioned in a previous video. Check that out, and how they can predict what players should do in the future in the same scenarios. So GPS use in elite sports, we'll look at how people do it in the actual performance, so the match performance. So during a performance, GPS gives coaches and analysts live quantitative data. So there'll be analysts in the stands looking at data coming from GPS trackers. So how far a player's gone, how fast they're still going, whether they're maybe slowing down, whether maybe they're not covering as much distance as they were early on. That could be an indicator of fatigue. They could be looking at maybe areas of the field they're covering from a tactical point of view. Are they in the right places at the right times? Now, it might be they know a certain player starts to fatigue at a certain distance covered, and if they've done that early in the match, let's say in football or rugby, they might consider taking them off and substituting them, particularly if they're coming back from an injury. Now, that data goes into a software program such as Prozone. We mentioned that before, and that allows coaches to analyse tactics as well, so they can look at this GPS data afterwards. They can look at one player, all of their team, they can put the other team on at the same time, so they can look at how close players were marking. Were they marking tight enough at certain places in the game? In rugby, were they leaving large defensive holes? Which players were at fault? So they can look at the GPS tracking, which gives you an eagle-eye view from above, a bird's eye view from above, of what was happening in situations, almost like little dots moving around a pitch. You can use that data then to assess your team and how you can make them improve. But you can also look at teams that you're playing in the future. What are their traits? How do they attack? How do they defend? How can you exploit that using this Prozone data? So during training, they also wear trackers. Now they wear that because some players maybe really keen and train really hard and push themselves and actually are covering vast amount of distances and fatiguing themselves, and maybe that's a reason they're not performing as well on the weekend. Most elite sports don't train on fitness as a focus during the season. That's a pre-season focus. So they don't want their players fatiguing during the week between matches. So they do monitor that. Now in pre-season, they want to make sure those players are getting enough distance, are getting enough interval reps at the right speed. They can see levels of effort. They can tell if people are not trying as hard as they should be. Now, if they're coming back from injury, they can also use it to allow them to get the right level of rehab. They can see if they're doing the right distance of training at the right speed. Are they trying to come back at the right tempo so they don't re-injure themselves? So it's a really good way the player and the coaches can monitor their rehab. Really important that a player's distance is covered. Now, this is often what Prozone looks like. This is just one version. So this is showing players' runs at any given moment in the match, showing where the space is, and then you've got a video clip with that kind of thing translated in, where you can see distance between players, space created. They often do this circle around a player to see how far it is to get to another player, so a 2 meter zone. In recreational sport, this is where it's really kind of booming at the moment. So not only can you get free apps and tracker watches such as Garmin and FitBit, you can get free apps on your phone. Sometimes they sync, most of the time they sync with those watches as well, but you can just use a free app to track your distance, speed, maps the run that you just went on or your cycle. Some of the watches and trackers even record swimming too, so you can, if you're doing an open water swim or even a pool swim, it will track the distance you did on that. And that's, a lot of these apps are absolutely free, and you can wear them on your arm or have it in a pocket, and it will track exactly what you have done. And then you can save that, and you're able then to kind of use that as a motivational tool. You can monitor what you've done, you can track how far you're running, you can record personal bests. It will tell you those things. It records how high in altitude you went if you're running or cycling as well. So if you're a real kind of like sport data geek, these apps are brilliant for that, and they can motivate you to try and get better in cycling or swimming or running. Most of these can even monitor heart rate when they're linked to a watch or a chest monitor. So they look a little less. These are the watches, and they've got different screens for different kind of settings. So whether it's heart rate, speed, distance covered, time elapsed. And then on a watch, it can look like that as well. And then often if they're cycling, they like the little maps, so they can see where they're going live, or they can plan their routes and then use these almost like a map that they can follow as well. Really important for the person to help them if they want to motivate them to reach their goals. I use these, and I have to say they definitely help motivate you, particularly early on, because you want to try and just get a little bit faster or beat a time, and you can see how you were going kilometre to kilometre, which were your good kilometres, which were your slower kilometres, and where can you improve. Did you go out too fast? Did you not finish strong enough? It helps you quantify performance and allows comparison with your friends or training partners, and it allows them to get quantitative data. Okay, we've mentioned that before. Really helps you measure your own performance. There are drawbacks with GPS, and because you're using computers, there's often a margin for error. GPS data is not perfect. It can't map you to the exact meter, but it will try and get close. There's human error when you're setting these devices up. You have to make sure that GPS has been located before you start. If you start without that, then the whole run can be ruined because the GPS hasn't located the satellite, and your run can look quite bizarre on the map. There can be errors transferring the data from one device to another, little glitches if both aren't up to date. There's software bugs, viruses, glitches that can get into computer data. So things like Prozone, the people who are doing those, they have to make sure their security is really up to spec, that only that's going to Prozone, people can't hack their data, but also that their virus software is up to date to stop it corrupting. Now, GDPR has become a really big thing. This is data protection. So all the things that you go on, such as social media, you have to now sign off about data protection. Those things that pop up at the start of most websites that you have to agree to cookies, all of those things are tracking your location and personal preferences. These things do that all the time because they're tracking your data, where you've gone, when you go out, where you've left, so they can kind of track where you live. So you can set these privately so people don't know where you live or when you go out, so they don't know your habits. But otherwise, if they're open, there's a lot of data being sent out there. You can minimize these threats by backing up the data correctly and regularly on Prozone. You can keep up to date with your virus blockers, take care or make sure the protocols are right for data input. Error detection software, that's at the elite level really, to make sure that the data that's coming from the players' trackers is going in correctly, so you can have systems to do that. And then for private and recreational users, making sure the privacy level is at the level you want it to be. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've posted some links here, one for that next gen stats and another for the other technology videos. Good luck.